At time of recording, it is currently 6 a.m. on a Monday. I stayed up pretty late to do some homework for summer school, a little bit of college homework, and I stayed up late enough to catch House of the Dragon. And yeah, I'm gonna do my little review here. Hopefully, I'm not gonna be here, too long, as I am pretty exhausted. I am tired, and I still got more to do today. So, yeah, I'm tired. But it was a good episode. It was another good episode as expected. There will be some spoilers in this video. So this will be kind of like a review spoiler talk kind of thing. Like I said, I'm not going to take too long. Try and make it kind of brief. What more can I say? Just like, obviously spoilers. So if you don't want anything spoiled, click off now. But whenever something is good, right, you how much more can you say other than it's good, right? You kind of have to break it down with details. How I'm doing this is I'm very limited on how I can edit my videos and make analogies and whatnot. So really it's just me kind of shooting the shit a little bit. So it takes place, it takes place like literally less than a day after the first episode. Right. So one of the biggest problems with that first episode that a lot of fans acknowledge, and that I myself even acknowledge, and I didn't mind, I guess, how it was done. But if there was the whole blood and cheese thing, if they were going to do it without Maelor, which doesn't make sense to me because they kind of need Maelor, but the way that they did it wasn't ineffective, right? Like it got the point across, but it also lacked. Like it would have been way more powerful if they had just done it the way that the books did it, right? So that actually has a ripple effect into how the rest of the story plays out in this episode. And there are certainly, like, there's a lot of things that they still get right from the book that are really good and really well done. But there's also a couple things that are like not as well done, right? And deviate from the source material. And so I have no confirmation whether or not this show actually includes Maelor as one of the children of Helena. So I have no idea if he's even in the story. But a weird deviation, because I don't remember this in the book, but Otto Hightower in the show says that we should use the death of this child to be propaganda against Rhaenyra. And in a way, it works. It works. It turns the people of King's Landing against Rhaenyra because they parade this child around, this headless child around. And you can see the child's neck has been like stitched up because they got the head back from blood and cheese. One of the first deviations from the book, as I recall, is that Blood, the member of the Gold Cloaks, he dies. Now, it's assumed in the show that he does die because Aegon II comes in and beats him to death in his cell, which that happens in the book. Like, well, not the part where Aegon beats him to death, but the fact that he gets captured and gets killed. But he dies kind of off screen, so you don't really see him die. That's, at least I'm assuming he dies, right? Excuse me. So that's kind of the first deviation, is that they don't show his death per se, and they have Aegon take care of it, as well as the, marching around of a child's dead body, right? Which is kind of gruesome, and I thought it was strange. I thought it was a strange choice to do that instead of just including Maelor, right? And just including that part of the story. But at the same time, I also see what they're trying to do to benefit the TV show's long-running narrative, right? Because when you're reading the book, you could be blasting through a full episode of House of the Dragon in only a couple paragraphs, because the book is written as a history. It's cliff notes. The book is written like events are cliff notes. So you could be reading an entire paragraph and that could blaze through a whole season if you weren't careful, basically. So the show does a pretty decent job at trying to bring intricate plot lines together and try and incorporate them into a TV show long-running serialized narrative, basically. Now, Otto Hightower, as much as I give the character shit, he's actually one of the smartest characters in the show. He comes off as a cold-hearted dick, but at least he was like, hey, we could use the death of this child to, turn people against Rhaenyra. And for a little bit it works, up until Aegon gets a little bit too antsy. Now, the way that they treated Aegon in the show was kind of surprising to me, because he's not what I expected him to be. He was actually kind of good-hearted at first, and now he's more emotional, more in pain, more wants revenge. And so, basically, he goes out, and this is another thing that was from, because I was under the impression that the rat catcher from the book, Cheese, from Blood and Cheese, he survives. He makes it out of this alive. But in the show, he doesn't. And we get to see it, but in the books it also explains that his fate is unknown, basically. So that's kind of whatever. But you can see some of the memes that will come from the show, probably things like the dog looking up at the rat catcher's like, yeah, I see you hanging up there. That's for kicking me in the last episode. You know what I mean? Like, Rhaenyra is like, oh, they're blaming me for the death of this child. And then she looks over at Daemon, and Daemon's just like, did I do that? Like, you could see some of like the memes of this stuff. Like, you could see like the way Kristen Cole, for God's sake, Kristen Cole is a simp, first of all, and he projects so hard on Sir Eric, the other member of the White Cloaks, and he's like, hey, you don't want to get your cloak dirty, right? We're supposed to represent honor. And he's projecting so hard on this dude, trying to guilt him into doing this mission, which he does. And that was the more finer part of the book that I actually really enjoyed, was executed in the show, was the Battle of the Twins, the twins Eric and Eric. And how they handled that was pretty smart. But the way they presented it in the show was like, okay, Aegon has this plan with Kristen Cole, and he explains it to Otto Hightower. And Otto Hightower is like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Otto Hightower's like, God's help us, man. Like, that's a stupid idea. How are you trusting one twin to go and infiltrate, and you're expecting them to be stupid enough to just let them walk in? And so Otto Hightower kind of has that, he's kind of the smartest character in the story. And so, at least right now he is. And it's been a while since I read the book, but I was under the impression that he was Hand of the King up until, I won't spoil that part, up until, a later event. But he loses his duty as his hand. Like, he's no longer the hand, and Aegon gives it to Kristen Cole, which I thought was interesting. I knew that he would trust Kristen Cole to go out and, build an army. I knew that was going to happen because it happens in the books. But another interesting part of that is Kristen Cole's banging his mom, Alicent Hightower, which I thought was another part of the juicy interweave drama of all the characters. And of course, Kristen Cole projecting the entire time, trying to keep his hands clean. And Alicent is the very end scene is them two getting it on. But before that, Alicent's like slapping him, trying to get him to get out of there. And it's basically just foreplay. It's basically, their relationship is so like cliche in the terms of like, hey, this is the last time we're going to do it, okay? And then they do it again, and they keep doing it, right? I thought that was an interesting thing, and I wonder if Aegon's ever going to find out about that. But I assume Otto Hightower, now that he's no longer Hand, he's going to go to he's going to go to Highgarden to get the Tyrells on his side. And he's going to try and, my prediction is that he's going to try and sway the kingdom in the favor of Aegon again, the entirety of the Seven Kingdoms in the favor of Aegon again, through what he does in the book by recruiting everybody, reaching out to contacts. Some of them don't make it to him, some of them fail. And so we're going to kind of see him go out and try and branch out and meet people. Meanwhile, Daemon, everybody's, thinks that Daemon's so cool, and I think Daemon's freaking awesome, but he's not a good dude. He's not a good dude. Nobody in the show is a good person. It's just, I know that they try and paint like Rhaenyra and Alicent as good people, but like, ain't nobody in this story a good person. Ain't nobody. So Daemon goes out to, what's it called? Dang, I forgot the name now. But he goes out to try and win favor for Rhaenyra. And we just see him kind of fly off, and we're not going to see him until the next episode. But you could tell that Rhaenys Rhaenys knows that he's no good. Rhaenys can smell the shit on that dude. And so Rhaenys talks with Corlys. Now that reminds me of Corlys, and we're seeing a lot of like, there's still setup, right? There's still some slow moving setup with things like Alan and Adam, the guys that were fixing Corlys' ship, and we're seeing setup to things that are probably going to happen later. And like the dude, what was his name? He was I want to say it started with an H. Daemon goes to Harrenhal. That's what it was, Harrenhal. But I'm trying to think of the dude that went to Aegon trying to get a favor for like steel or something. And we see him again in this episode, and we see his family, and I thought, that was a weird cutaway. Why'd we need to see that? And I assume it's because he's going to play another part later. And I have a theory that he's going to be one of the people that is one of the Dragon Riders later down the line. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, and I hope I'm not spoiling too much for those who haven't read the book. But I thought it was interesting that way some of this was constructed, because there was a few times where I was like, that feels inconsistent. Especially things like, Rhaenyra being so shocked at, the revenge that happens. But at the same time, I guess she would be shocked because that's a horrific thing to happen to a child in that first episode with Blood and Cheese. But it was the consequences of her actions of saying that she wanted Aemond that would cause Daemon to go out and hire Blood and Cheese to try and kill Aemond, but end up not, right? And end up killing Jaehaerys. And so, or is it Jaehaerys? No, Jaehaerys. So basically, if you're wondering still, is there a message in this show? Like the message? Not particularly. It depends on if you look for it, right? If you're looking for it, you'll find it, for sure. But if you're just looking to have fun and have a nice story to be invested in, I don't think the show would take you out of it too much. But there are some things that are like, okay, that's a little bit iffy, and I don't know why they made that choice. I don't know why they deviated from the book in that way. I'm interested to see how it moves forward, how much they either deviate or respect the source material. I'm interested to see how that goes, because it's kind of whiff-waffy right now. And it's hard to tell where the continuity lies, especially when they change things like Maelor not being in the Blood and Cheese event. And so if you watch till after the episode to get the writers, producers, actors, and directors, and showrunners, their opinions on the episode, I would stay away from that, because they mostly force their agenda on things that don't really, make sense. Like, I mean, some of it, like I said, if you look for it, you'll find the message, but they kind of push it in a way that makes it like, oh man, now you kind of ruined that scene for me, right? So I'd stay away from those after episode things, because writers, producers, actors, and directors in Hollywood are not very smart, and most of them have that, political agenda about them. But final thing I thought was brilliant was I guess if I haven't mentioned it yet, but the final thing that was brilliant to me was the Eric and Eric fight. I think, okay, so I did mention it, but what I found interesting about it is that there was one deviation from that I found like troubling, and is that they didn't die in each other's arms, because the twins were supposed to die in each other's arms. And yeah, there was definitely like an allegory for like an American Civil War thing. Like it was kind of, it's the twins fighting is basically a foreshadowing of what's to happen with the rest of the kingdom, with the Targaryens, when you foreshadow things like the Blackfire rebellions, and basically the absolute crumbling of the Targaryen dynasty into what we eventually see in Game of Thrones, right? And so their fight is very important in Westerosi history. And so, but one detail that, like, because besides them dying in each other's arms, because we don't see that. One of them dies, and then the other one commits suicide, right? Or commits the bad S word so YouTube doesn't demonetize me. But I'm not even monetized, so what does it matter? But he basically falls on his own sword. And I found it kind of weird that he was able to impale his brother through armor. I think it might have been lower, so it went under the armor instead of through the armor, because that would have been weird if it went through the armor. I can't stand when armor doesn't work how it's supposed to in fantasy. I know, right? Physics and, logic and common sense would bother me in a fantasy story. Who would have known? But basically, I found it interesting that they didn't die in each other's arms. Now, one of them, okay, you could say that one brother did die in the other one's arms because whenever he stabs him, he hugs him. So you could say that, but I always imagined it was that they kind of fell together stabbing each other, basically, right? Like it was that kind of thing. But the other one, falls on his own sword, which still not too much of a deviation because they both die, basically, right? And I thought that scene was pretty awesome. I thought it was brilliantly done. But what would have made it better for me is if Mushroom was in it. So if you don't know this little piece of lore, Mushroom was the dwarf that accompanied Rhaenyra at, I believe Dragonstone was the name of it. So the dwarf was Mushroom. And he was kind of like, he was a jester, right? He was a jester, and he was kind of like a narrator for some of the story. And he has a pretty good take on the twins fighting. Might be a little corny and obvious in how he explains it, but still, I thought it would have been interesting to at least have Mushroom in the show. If they would have done it, they should have done it last season, to be honest with you. It's too late, so I don't know if they're going to actually do it at any point. But, yeah, it felt weird without Mushroom. It felt kind of weird. But overall, a good 7 or 8 out of 10 in terms of episodes, go. Yeah, it was fun. It's fun. It's not fun, but like it's enjoyable to watch, right? It's an enjoyable show. So, House of the Dragon, it's still it's still early to tell what's going on, but only time will tell how things will shape out. So, if you like this video, like, share, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like the video, that's fine. Still like, share, and comment. I don't care. Yeah. I can't wait till next week, and I guess we'll see what's next on the menu for Isaac of the Dead. Peace. Don't smoke.